Item F, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding request from the Lemures to vacate.
Oh, no, E.
Or E.
Sorry, we need to go back to E.
Oh, I'd already checked that. I am so sorry. I checked that off. Okay, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding appointment of one planning and zoning board member to fill an unexpired term. Stephanie.
Okay, the only application, and I may have messed up on some of y'all's, but the only application you should have in your agenda packet is for Richard Vaughn. He is not here this evening. He's traveling on vacation with his wife. He came in to see me before he left. I did reach out to TJ Walker, who was the nice lady that lives down on Southwest Bernard that applied last time. She said that she was going to need to think about it and then just withdrew at this time. So the only applicant that we have is Richard Vaughn. We're filling Jack Johnson's unexpired term at this point. I don't know how many of you were here, but Mr. Vaughn also came and spoke to council not long ago about the vacant council seat. So you guys have met him recently, I believe.
Okay, do y'all have any questions for Stephanie? Since he's not here. Do I have a motion to accept Mr. Vaughn as a member of the Board of Adjustments and Planning and Zoning Committee? Board of Adjustments, right?
Yes, I'll make that motion. I talked to him talked to him a couple of times. I think he'd be a good person for that job. I really do.
Okay, great. So I have a motion to appoint Mr. Vaughn, Richard Vaughn, to the P&Z Committee. Do I have a second? Mr. Martin will second. All in favor? Good, thank you. I guess now I'll go back to the one I've already seen. I haven't checked it yet, so here we go. Okay, discussion, consideration, and possible action regarding request from the Lemures to vacate 100 foot of unimproved portion of Elm Street, 11 acres west of Vine Street and bounded by block 26 and 27 of the original town site of Glen Rose between 101 Northeast Vine and 104 Southwest Vine Street. Mr. Lynch. And I do have some people who would like to speak. And do we want them to speak first, or do you want to speak first?
Let staff go first. There's a lot to this one.
Okay. All right, Mr. Lynch.
Mayor, I would prefer to defer to our city attorney on this topic. It's got some legal implications.
Okay, I'll take it over.
Good.
All right, as we discussed last meeting, folks, you look, of course, the property, y'all know where it's at. We've heard, last meeting and previous meetings going back for several months now discussing the vacation of the Elm Street part of the street. Of course, last month you guys directed city staff to look more into some additional issues. What we uncovered from that was, number one, Mesquite Street is partially vacated, but it's not vacated the entire street, we don't believe. We don't find any type of resolution or ordinance adopted by this council that would vacate the entire Mesquite Street. So I think that does change things legally from a perspective on vacating the Elm Street down here. At the end of the day, folks, there's two things. Number one, can we partially vacate a street? Yes. What happens in that scenario? Well, it talks about the consent of all the adjoining landowners, the Lemures on both sides of the street. Yes. Of course, I think last meeting was brought to the council's attention by Mr. Moore, the adjoining property owner, that, well, he's adjoining or abutting the property as well because they share a common boundary line or a common intersection. And maybe so. I don't know legally if there's a straight answer to that question. To me, the alternative answer to that would be, well, where's the stop? You claim he has a adjoining boundary line, then what prevents the next property owner from having an adjoining boundary line or median line? And, then really, what is the point of the law allowing you to partially vacate a street? So, in your considerations for tonight, I anticipate, I guess, Mr. Moore's attorneys here, at least there's a presentation about their position on this issue. And in that, I'll tell you right now, there's really kind of two legal perspectives to take on the thing. Number one, they, of course, will claim that if we vacate the street, that the vacation is void, so they have to file a lawsuit to do that. Part part of that would be, do they have the right to bring a lawsuit? I guess if the court deems that they're abutting or adjoining property owner, they could. If they're not, which I'll tell you legally I think is questionable, then they might not have the right to bring that suit. The next issue, of course, would be is whether or not they have a inverse condemnation claim or a taking claim against the city for depriving them of value in their property. Of course, law is if we come in and deprive somebody of the right of use of their property, then therefore they must be compensated by fair market value. And in this case here, once again, it matters, number one, if they're abutting or adjoining the property, and number two, when the courts really get into determining whether or not the city has unlawfully taken somebody's property, what they're going to ultimately look at is whether or not the right of access or change in the right of access is a material and substantial impairment to the property, and in my opinion, I think that's a lot easier question to answer than whether or not it's adjoining or abutting. The fact that the Moores have never had access to Elm Street, the street's not developed, there's not any access to it, to the property necessarily. They've always used Cedar Street to access the property, of course, access through 67, I guess potential access through Mesquite Street, so I don't think there's as much risk, I guess, for the city as whether or not there's a type of inverse condemnation claim that we brought. Ultimately, if the court was to find that, I guess, the vacation was incorrect or unlawful, then, I mean, we void the vacation, restore the property, and I guess we've got attorney fees and things like that, so. That's really a decision for you guys to have to make tonight. Moving forward, I wish I could tell you that, yes, 100% either way, you can or can't do it. I don't think it's legally that clear cut. I think if you as a council wish to move forward and adopt the proposed ordinance of vacating the property or the partial part of the street there on the street, I think we legally move forward, and if we had opposition on that, we would be able to put together a good faith case and argument to support our position, and likewise, if we decide not to, I mean, there are, of course, reasons why you, as a city council, would not want to do that. But I would hope you get to make a decision on the best for the council and for the city. In addition to that, there may be some way, I don't know what the Lemures ultimately want to do yet. You know, I'm sure they'd prefer us to vacate that street so they could possibly erect structures, things like that in that current street. But maybe, you know, there could be a possibility we could continue to work with them if you decide not to vacate the street and do some additional easement agreements or allow them to encroach upon the easement or something like that to try to satisfy all the parties. But I know the preferred method for everyone involved, as far as the Lemures are concerned, is to vacate that portion of Elm Street. So that's me rambling on for a second. So any questions about what I just said? There's really kind of two issues. Number one, legally, can we do it? I think the question is probably so. Number two, what happens if we can't do it? Well, then there's two claims, whether or not the vacation is valid or not. And number two, do the Moores have any type of compensation they're entitled to for a taking claim? The vacation part, I think, is, like I said, the bigger question. The taking, I don't think there's any inverse condemnation claim or anything like that that would be exposure for us. So, questions?
I have a question from the last meeting we had. I think it was discussed, I don't know if it was to you, Tom, or Jim, but somebody mentioned about text law or state law as far as the stretch of the street versus the radius of the downslope. Did you find any information about that?
Let me go through. Thank you, Councilman Bryant. I have from page 2-27 roadway design manual text dot that local streets of urban and suburban, the highest percentage grade is to be 15%. Their suggestion is that it's supposed to be 8% for commercial, and that the desirable percentage is 5%. And I've gone out and done some triangulation and some measurements on Elm Street, and I really didn't know this until we did some calculations. So again, this is part of this on Elm Street using our lines. This is not using transits. This is using our lines on our GIS. On the lower end of Elm Street, from about the middle of the restaurant, there's a 30-foot rise, 143-foot run. That's 11.85%. So it's very moderate, and then it starts to go up, and it gets steeper. Now, on the top part to about the middle of Mesquite, It's a 30-foot rise over 90-foot run, which is 18.43%. So the figure that I had on TxDOT, that's why I say you bring that up, is 15%. Whether that is a set-in-stone argument for cities that they must do it, we use TxDOT standards and North Central Texas Council of Government standards for our public works, so we do look at those. We don't just guess them in this room. There were some other streets that were brought up. Now remember, we're up to 18% on this. Let's see, what have we got? That's Texas Drive is 6.79%. If you know what Texas Drive looks like on the steepness, that is West Gibbs coming down to Wheeler Branch. It's fairly steep there. That's the steepest slope actually paved in this city, 11.09%. That's the prices. Do you have those other ones? That's the land values. What do we have? We have three things on there.
This one, and then that's it.
Okay, that was land valuations in the area. So again, TxDOT standard was generally 15%, 8% on commercial, and we've got about between 12 and 18% on this one, on it.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore's legal counsel has put together a presentation also.
Okay. So, Mr. Rogers, I believe you have a,
I've got a question.
Okay,
before they get
sorry.
started. Dr. Brady,
Yes, sir.
does the Moore's property abut up to the Moores?
In my opinion, I think ultimately the answer to that's no, but that's just my opinion. I don't think there's any case law that I can find that defines that 100% that says, yes, that is the case. So that's your risk you're taking. I don't know. I mean, that's would be left to, in this scenario, for a court to
I
decide.
mean, if you look on the schematics, it's not going to show them button up though, right?
Well, but yeah, we're talking about the part of the street though, as far as vacating the street, on the street side. And like I said, so it's been discussed, you know, if we rechange the survey and the mirrors want to vacate less of the street than what's currently been presented, I mean, that maybe solves that problem potentially as well, but I can't guarantee you once again 100% that solves the problem. So like I said, if you're looking for an answer for me to tell you that there's no liability in moving forward, I can't give you that. That's not prudent legal advice. I think definitely we move forward as presented, that we have a good argument to make to a court if it came to that point.
Can you go back to the other picture? This one right here.
This one?
Nope. This one. Where does the Moore's property come down to? Right here.
Yeah, I was
Brady.
wondering about it.
On the front, like towards the street,
Uh-huh.
Doesn't.
It
well,
doesn't?
all the way to the center of the street.
Okay.
Sorry.
their property comes to the center of that street.
Well, I mean, it's
I think
pretty
she's
much just
asking
gonna
how
be-
close to the buildings, how far down towards buildings, off the hill does it come? If I can get my internet to work, I may be able to pull up an appraisal district to show,
It's a, generally, I mean, and it's probably on the appraisal map, but generally, I mean, the law is gonna be in most plotting through a city that the adjoining property owners or property owners are gonna own up to the half of the street, so. The city doesn't technically own that property, the street, they have an easement. That typically is the scenario that we have. And so the city does not own the land, they have the right to use the land, but the ownership retains in the property owners that are adjoining or abutting the street itself. So that's why I said they own to half of the street. I guess the county owns the other half, since that's county property across the street.
I've got another question for Brady too.
Yes, sir, John.
Here where it says to abut means to be adjacent and refers to touching or to reach. What does to reach mean?
I don't know what that means. I don't know. So like I said, I mean, if the council wants another option that's not presented tonight, could be directly with mirrors to resurvey the property that sets back from the property line, I guess. And I know, of course, I'm sure the Moores argue that circumvents what the point of the intent of the law. But like I said, my opposition or my argument to that is, well, what point
I
does
can't
that
get it
quit?
today, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Because, I mean, the law clearly allows for you to partially vacate streets. So if we couldn't vacate, there's not a law that says I have to vacate my part of the street from my boundary line or boundary line. I think there's no law that I'm aware of, no case law says I can't vacate part of the street within my property.
It looks like we'd be on shaky ground, so.
But that's it. I mean, Councilman Martin, that's just sometimes decisions cities have to make. And
What do you look for? Which one?
I was trying to get on the internet so I could show you guys an aerial view of where the property line was
Yeah.
in comparison to where the building was, but I can't get it to work right
Can you take
now.
it back to the street
Absolutely.
now? They show the street. 'Cause I have a question.
This one?
No, that shows the street.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
yeah, right
This
here.
one, this one, this one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So where, you said we closed part of Mesquite, where did we close it at?
Mesquite was only closed.
From here over?
No. Mesquite, the portion that was closed is not on that map. The portion that was closed was from Hereford over to Cedar Street. So it would be this section that would be out.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now, if any more of the street has been vacated, we have no records here at City Hall. We found no records at the county courthouse. So the property owners would have to provide us with that information because there is no such information available.
Okay, I guess one of my questions, and I don't know if the council or everybody had a chance to walk it, is Mesquite Street, there is a fence there, but I don't know how wide a standard, how wide is a standard street, because it's almost on a decline. Like, part of it's, I don't even know how you would get a car on there, even if it was a street, because it looks to me like there's maybe 10 feet that it just drops off. So, I don't understand how it's even considered a street unless you're talking about half of it being on the decline of the property. So it's, I mean,
But if it's been designated as a street and that part hasn't been closed, regardless if we could get at it right now, could it eventually be fixed into one if they needed, if we needed it to?
how wide does the street have to be known?
I think in our ordinance it says, 26 feet, I believe, for a new street that's being in a development. And then,
I don't see but 10 feet maybe up there on, have you walked it?
yeah, I've walked it before.
Am I right, in my memory? I mean, is it like just 10 feet and then it just breaks down into a slope? Is that the
Yeah,
way?
that's pretty rough terrain. I mean, you'd have to do some extensive work to make it wide enough for a street.
It's cost millions.
Any other questions?
So what would have to happen, and I say, if we did agree to close the street, what would have to happen? Would we have to vacate the street first, and then what?
No, but vacating the street's the proper process. We can adopt the ordinance to vacate the street, that's it.
That's it?
Mr. Moore, you, okay.
You would have to adopt an ordinance and then wouldn't there also be an issue of fair market value to sell that to the adjoining property owners?
That's to be on both sides of it.
So then you guys would either have to decide on a fair market value or you would authorize Mayor Miller to do that on your behalf, but it's more than just the ordinance. Like I said, Mr. Rogers does have a presentation that he wanted to present as well.
All right, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you all. You got this on a PowerPoint
I do.
presentation. All right, good.
Do.
My name's Mike Rogers. I'm an attorney in Cleveland, 108 East Chambers Street. Been practicing law for about 40 some odd years. Bill and Nancy Moore are my clients, and I'm here tonight to be in opposition of the proposed abandonment of a portion of Elm Street. The proposal before the council is the same proposal, I believe, that was on the agenda for May 13th. It was tabled at that time until today. And it's my understanding that the same legal description that was before the council back on May 13th is the same legal description that we're being asked to consider tonight. The 1.1 acre of land for an abandonment to occur requires that all adjacent landowners consent. And previously, Mr. and Mrs. Moore have stated their opposition to this. And I think City Attorney pointed out a couple of Achilles heels perhaps with respect to the council moving forward with this. From my reading of the law and looking at the maps, clearly there is a point, and that's all the law requires. It doesn't have to be anything other than a point that where the Moore's property borders the street for which you're being asked to abandon. And I'm representing to the council that unless there is perhaps an attempt, as council mentioned, to redraw the surveyed lines with respect to this abandonment, that it would be illegal for this council to proceed with an abandonment where there is a touching, a point, where the Moore's property touches the surveyed area that the Moores are asking you to abandon. So I think what you've got to consider here is whether you want to buy the city of Glenrose a lawsuit, because that's what you're looking at here if y'all proceed with this, because we think that the way the proposal is submitted to you right now, there is a point in which there is a touching of the surveyed area that is being requested to be abandoned. So we would respectfully say to the council that for that reason alone, you should not grant this abandonment because of and quite frankly, I think the law is very clear on this. Council indicates that there may be ambiguity or something. I think not the way I read it. There only has to be a touching, a point, and clearly that is the situation that we have here. Going over to the Texas Transportation Code, the applicable law on this point, and I don't want to get involved in a legal debate here tonight with you guys. Y'all are not lawyers, but this pretty well speaks for itself. The governing body of a general law municipality by ordinance may vacate, abandon, or close a street or alley of the municipality if a petition signed by all of the owners of real property abutting the street or alley is submitted to the governing body. You don't have that here. You've got opposition by Mr. and Mrs. Moore. And there is a point of contact. So they come within the definition of what abut is. To abut means to lie adjacent and refers to touching or to reach. If you got a touching, even if it's a point, it's a touching. This abandonment would require Mr. and Mrs. Moore's approval, and they have declined to give that. Goes on further to say that to be adjacent means to have a common endpoint or border. And again, That's not ambiguous to me. As an attorney, I can tell you that if you've got a touching, then it's going to require all adjacent landowners to agree. You don't have that here. Next page. I want to point something out to you. The Moores are not trying to be arbitrary and capricious here. There's a reason why they're not agreeing to this. They own property all the way to Highway 67. And it was their plan, and I'll get into that in a moment, at some point to develop that area, that land that they own there. And what you would be creating would be a dead-end street for them in terms of future development. They already have approval from the Texas DOT to have an ingress and egress off of 67. That was already approved by DOT a long time ago for them. So they believe, and I think rightfully so, that that's going to injure them in terms of their property value. They're going to be limited in terms of what they're going to be able to do with that property. In terms of how wide is required, or how wide the road should be, or what type of slope should be, I mean, that a construction company can figure that out and make it right. I mean, it's true that this roadway has not been used for public purposes, but it certainly has been used by Mr. and Mrs. Moore over the years. But that's an issue that's really not for the council right now. But I'm telling you, that could be resolved if there was ever a future development of that roadway. We've got right before that one, if you can go back, these are the contests that both Mr. and Mrs. Moore signed with reference to the abandonment of this roadway. And go back now, if you will, to the silencing of the Moore's rights. The interpretation of the transportation code is pretty precise by the courts over the years. There was some suggestion by your counsel that maybe they move off of that point, and so that the Moores would no longer be touching the proposed abandoned area, the survey, and I think that this is an attempt. If that were to be done, I think that's just an attempt to circumvent the statutory law, in effect to silence the Moore's rights under that Texas Transportation Code. That law is there for a reason, and I don't think that council should be trying to maneuver around the law to try to figure a way to help a landowner. And that's basically what would be required here, I think, because again, I go back to what I already said to you. There's a point of contact. I don't even think that's in dispute. It shouldn't be in terms of the maps that I looked at with reference to this. So if in fact there's a point of contact with proposed survey of abandonment, that's illegal. You can't do it unless the Moores were to consent. And I think if you go forward with that, more likely than not, litigation is going to ensue. I think y'all will lose. I think you'll lose that. council may disagree with me, but to me, it's pretty clear cut. I don't want to get involved with trying to recite case law. I mean, that's not necessary here this evening. But there was one case that was being relied upon, the Jordan case, which really and truly is not on all fours. It's not in the same context as what we have here, the dispute that we've got here tonight. So I'm not going to go into that though. Going to the next one. The Moores have used this property. They used it for both foot and vehicular pass from, over, and through the property. Now, this gets a little technical here, guys, but if you can follow me on this map, there's some letters A, B, and C that are there. Can y'all see that? Okay. Follow me if you can on this. But the Moores have used this property for foot and vehicular pass from and over and through their property to the areas designated as B and C, if you see that, down to A to get to downtown Glen Rose. With A being the unimproved Elm Street roadway. That was the subject of the May 13th, 2019 discussion here a few weeks ago. B, the area designated as B, being an unimproved portion of Elm Street roadway, originally slotted for abandonment along with the areas designated as A and C by the city. Those are the areas that are in contest here. Glen Rose is growing, and one of the things that Mr. and Mrs. Moore have agreed to do, which they're willing to give the city an easement from Highway 67 all the way down to where it would connect with Elm Street, free of charge, okay? And that has value to the city, but they're willing to do that for you. And we've got that sort of outline for you on a couple of other slides coming up here in just a moment. This is a little bit of history about the Hollywood and Vine project that was attempted there at that same location here some years back. A little bit of history with respect to that. One of the other issues, folks, is that, in my opinion, that potentially, and I think Mr. and Mrs. Lamore should listen to what I'm about to say. We had a case down in Johnson County, the 18th District Court, involving a motocross motorcycle track that was built. We just finished this case here not too long ago. These folks spent $250,000 on this motocross track, and the neighbors were upset because of the noise. A lawsuit was filed by our firm, and Judge Neal entered an injunction against the use of that track because of the noise level. So those folks spent about $250,000 for naught. And I can tell you that you have a sound stage like this that's proposed to be built there. It's going to create a lot of noise, and under the penal code in Texas, if there's more than 80 decibels of sound that travels across to other people's property line, then it's going to be subject to being enjoined. So, I'm not telling these folks how to run the railroad, or what to do or what not to do, but I can tell you that, you know, if there's a sound expert that gets hired and does measurements, if this thing goes forward, and you got more than 80 decibels of sound coming across the property line, it's going to get shut down. So that's another issue, not really what's before the council tonight, but it's certainly something for them to consider in terms if they go forward with this proposed project. This next page has to do with some case law with reference to abutting landowners' rights. And again, I'm not going to bore you with legalisms tonight, but I think there's a serious question whether or not it would be legal for this council to abandon that roadway as designated in the survey, as written and as presented to you. If you'll go over there to future development, which is 2 or 3. Okay. If you see the dotted line there, just for your perspective.
Oh, careful.
For your perspective, this is 67 right here. As I told you a moment ago, Mr. and Mrs. Moore are willing to dedicate this to the city free of charge for future use in terms of the development of this roadway. And you know, this would be the only way that you can get from Highway 67 to downtown Glen Rose. You know, you don't have any direct access the way this would be situated, okay? I'm not that familiar with your town, but I've been here many times. And this would be an easy way for people to get to and from downtown Glen Rose, easier than anything that you got right now. But they're willing to do that. And I think that's very generous on their part, because that's real valuable land up there on Highway 67. But again, that's the part of the other side of the coin, which council alluded to, is that, let's say for a second that I'm totally wrong, that we file a lawsuit about this, and legally the council has a right to do what they're doing. I'm submitting to you that your problem is not over, because then you've got to resolve whether or not, by virtue of the fact that you closed that road, in effect, you closed that road, that this does away with Mr. and Mrs. Moore's right to maximize the future development of this property.
You don't mind, I'd like to just stick to the portion we're talking about, because honestly, I don't see that portion of the road ever being of any interest to the children.
I understand, but it has relevancy, though, to the liability of the city of Glen Rose for an illegal taking of property by virtue of the decreased value that would result from the roadway being abandoned, and basically there being a dead-end street there. So that's why I think it's relevant in terms of what we're talking about right now. So I agree with council. You got 2 problems. Council has identified the 2 problems. Number 1, does the city have a legal right to abandon this without the consent of the Moores? I would submit to you that you do not. And the second question is, well, what if you do, and you win that war, then are you gonna owe the Moores any money because of your actions here? Council doesn't believe that it would be a lot, if anything, but I would disagree, because I would, again, tell you that that's very valuable property there on 67, and you're, in effect, decreasing the value of that indirectly by closing and abandoning that road, so there could not ever be future development of that roadway. So it's your decision here this evening, folks. That's why you get the big bucks to be on the city council. But I just think it's a mistake to abandon a roadway when you're looking square down the barrel of a lawsuit, and a lawsuit that, in my humble opinion, you're going to lose. The way the survey reads right now, there's a point of contact, and that point of contact requires Mr. and Mrs. Moore's consent. They have not. So I would respectfully request that you not abandon that roadway. Anybody have any questions for me? I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Oh, one question.
Okay.
When you're talking about budding land property, where are you getting your information? Where's the survey that you decided that the properties do?
Okay. There's if you'll go to the additional consent required,
On yours?
on mine, yes.
Okay.
It's headed additional consent required.
Nope. Where did I pass it?
It's right here.
Okay.
Find it?
Go back.
It's the third page of there.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay, right. Okay, to answer your question specifically, right here is the point. And this point abuts the survey of the requested area that's being made here for abandonment purposes. And I'm saying to y'all that you can't do it because you got a point of contact. You can't do it without the Moore's consent. So again, if you proceed, I mean, you're going to do it at your own risk, and it's probably going to cost the city of Glen Rose a lot of money when it's all said and done. And I honestly think that it's a risk that the city council shouldn't take.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Rogers?
All right. Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Lemures are also here. They're the ones with the agenda item.
All right, so Mr. or Mrs. Lemure, Stephen Lemure is signed. If you would like to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dana Lemure, and I live at 1378 County Road 301 here in Glen Rose, so 327. Sorry, I don't know where I live apparently. And I am just going to share with you what is written in the TLG, which chapter 253, chapters 272, and chapters 273. That's from Texas law regarding easement and abandonment of street. First of all, it says it cannot be abandoned. It must be conveyed to other parties. You can search for a release of easement, and it can be treated as the sale of real property. The city must adopt an ordinance, as the city secretary informed us all earlier, and direct city officials to execute a conveyance and use of the proceeds from that sale would be required to purchase other type of city investment. Chapter 273 specifically talks about the public auction or bidding of fair market value of this, so that you have to establish a fair market value of the area, unless It is a narrow strip owned in fee or used by an easement in which that conveyance with adjacent, which means alongside or next to, not abutting, there's a difference. And it does say adjacent in TLG chapter 273, property owners who own underlying property, in which case that is our GR Vines owns both sides, either side of the stated area. Because we are talking about a narrow strip, which they give examples of narrow strips being proposed streets, alleyways, sidewalks, and so forth. And that's all I have for you. I'm gonna let Steve take it from here.
I'm Steve Lemure. We live together, same place. I'm sorry you guys are having to deal with this. There's some important things on the agenda about safety and whatnot, so I'm gonna be real quick. Sorry you guys don't charge by the hour either. I asked Mr. Moore to call me a year ago when we talked about this. We had a really nice conversation outside. I gave him my cell phone. I said, call me, let's go to lunch, let's sit down and see if we can work something out. He's chosen to bring an attorney, who, by the way, is threatening to sue you guys, and I'll indemnify the city, Mr. City Attorney, if this goes through, because he has no case. I'm not an attorney, but I've been in commercial real estate for 20 years. Land value goes up when development happens. He has perfectly good access on 67. If he wanted to build a road down through there that splits our property, I would be thrilled, because that would increase the value of our property on both sides of that street, because that'd be the first street you come in off 67, stop sign, and we've got two great retail spaces right there. It was 100 years before he started practicing law where they said that that was going to be a street, and we now know that you can't build a street there. 11 to 18% grade, it can't happen. So it's in disrepair. There's a giant pile of gravel. I didn't put it there, it happened before we moved, but there's wood, there's trash, it's a mess. It looks terrible when you're coming from the south to the north and you stop at our square and all you see is that junk sign. We did get rid of the Hollywood and Vine sign as soon as we bought the property, because we understood that there were several people in town that didn't think that was a great thing, so we went out and took care of that. Indemnification, I think that, you know, us bringing almost $2 million worth of investment to the city to try and activate the city square and build community is significant, and I think that will actually improve Mr. Moore's property significantly over having nothing there except abandoned and some abandoned easement and no road that won't ever get built. So I appreciate you guys very much. Thanks. Yes, sir.
Are you saying then that should this happen, and they decided to bring a route down from 67, that you would be open to that and open that area up?
No, I'm saying if he wants to build a road there now, where there's currently an easement, I would be thrilled.
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I don't think he can physically because of TxDOT regulations, and I doubt he wants to spend the...
Well, just setting that aside, you know,
yes,
in terms of any sort of issue that might come
Sure.
up, you would be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, the value of our
That makes
property would
sense.
go up significantly because that would then be the direct route into town, and there would, I'm assuming there would be a stop sign right there with our property on both sides. That would
Gotcha.
change our development plan completely. But yeah, I think it'd be fantastic. I just don't think it's possible, feasible financially or possible.
Yeah, well, yeah, whether it is or isn't is not the question.
Right, sure.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for Mr.
What are you planning on doing with that?
Yeah.
So,
Piece of property.
we're gonna reopen the restaurant as a higher-end restaurant, and we're gonna have a large outdoor area that's
There.
currently a non-code gray house that's fallen down, and we're gonna take that down, and so we'd like to have music in that area. We'd also like to have community activities and car shows. I know there's an agenda item about movies on the lawn and concert series. I think it'd be a great city amenity. I mean, we would love to work with the city to do certain things like the wine festivals and things like that there, and really build the community and have it as a large open area.
And just so you know how much research we have put into this, we have already met with the executive director of the Texas Music Project, who has consulted with us along with another professional stage builder about exactly what we would have to do to make that sound very friendly and not be a nuisance. But also, we've talked to them about getting involved with bringing all that they have to offer to Glen Rose, so that we can get on various tour schedules and so forth. So those individuals have already reached out to us, and we've spoken with other people who've been involved with Green Hall and so forth to help us get on those tour schedules so that we can revitalize. In current estimates are that we would employ roughly 60 people. Some of them would be seasonal, and many would be part-time.
So on that empty lot that we're talking about, is there any building that's gonna go on there? Is there
At
picnic
least,
tables?
minimum some temporary buildings.
Okay.
There might be some restrooms. I mean, we've got plans that we've put together. We haven't finalized the plans.
Okay.
And then there's a historic house further down and kind of back off.
Right.
And that would be completely redeveloped into kind of a market
And we appreciate that, but that's really not on the agenda for tonight. So
Correct.
I'd love to talk with you about
Perfect.
it at a different time.
That's all I
Thank
have.
you.
Are there
No
any more questions?
Okay, Mr. Moore has a comment on this item.
Dennis Moore, 301 Mission Street. I encourage the council that you're setting precedent if you vote to sell this portion of Elm Street, and it could be needed at some future time. Point two, consider the impact this decision will have on that portion of Elm Street and that it will have to the Moore's property values and their future property use. Number three, I feel providing an easement agreement to use this portion of Elm Street and the front portion of the properties along Vine Street should be sufficient for the current landowners as it was for Dogger, the prior owner. He had an agreement with the city to use the property, I believe, for his parking. That agreement was fine for Dogger, and he had a thriving business there. And I believe selling this portion of Elm Street should not be an option. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else, yes.
My name is Heather Viego, and I am speaking on behalf of several of the business owners in town. I know that several of them met with the Lemures about the project, and I believe there was a petition that was signed by several business owners and property owners. I just want to make sure y'all seen it and just.
It's in our package.
Just want to make sure y'all seen it and let you know that setting personal property and other things, we don't want to get involved in that. We just feel like for the city and for the downtown that it would be a nice addition, bring more people into downtown, and would be a revenue generator and a property booster for the city. So I just want to make sure y'all seen that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Never mind, I'm told to be quiet.
Anyone else have any comments? Okay.
I have a question for the Lemires, if you don't mind. So in the event that if we did decide not to agree to vacate that part of the street, how would that impact your plans as far as what you're going to do with that property?
I mean, significant impact, right? I mean, it's the whole, because the old Hollywood restaurant, and if you want the old Hollywood back. But right there it ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the easement.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the gray building that's just, falling down. It's in really bad shape to the side of that. So, that would take away any large open community space.
Any actual structures?
Not just structures, access to those structures. So if you'll go back to that map. Well, I'm sorry, I just want to try and answer your question. If you look at where it says well, the one side, okay, is where Hollywood is currently, right? And so the easement is, actually larger than the way the buildings are built, okay? Because the historical structure that the former Hollywood building is, it was there before the easement was, right? And so it doesn't even allow for proper, the space between your, a house and a building and where something else can be. And so we need the easement just to even fall inside of code. Now, if we add anything along that side, like a fence so that our employees could enter and exit and be in a protected area or have anything like that, then we would be encroaching upon that easement because there would not be enough space between that structure and that. So part of it is bringing the building to code and requires us to have more space.
And
The
just
other
the
thing
ki-
is the
just the
access
kitchen,
across. Yeah, and we're just talking about the kitchen
The
too.
kitchen would stick out in front of that.
And
Okay,
then,
there
yeah.
again, that's not really, and I know that's one of your questions, but it's not really, that doesn't have anything with us closing it or not, or granting
Well,
it.
and I appreciate that, but I disagree, because I think if we understand how either choosing to close it or not choosing to close it could significantly impact them, I think we should hear what they have to say.
Well, I would say this, if there's really the thought that a street can get built there, and we're not trying to pick that a battle, I mean, if there's really a thought that we can build a 15% grade street coming out of Glen Rose, and or you can't use condemnation, later to take that area, then keep it. But I would love to know, it hadn't happened for 120 years. I would like to know if and when and how that funding would occur, and if there's really gonna be a street there, then we'll go back and get with the architect and try and redo our plans to work around the street being there. But, I mean, if the engineer says it can't be done and we don't have funding for it, and that's my deal. But yes, it does impact the building itself.
The building itself and access to that open area beyond that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We need to be clear on what to do.
Yeah. Any other questions?
From the audience?
Any other comments?
Hi, Sarah Whitaker, 1804 Southwest Bernard Street, Woodrose, Texas. I really don't legally or whatever, but I have a question for the ones. Did you not know that wasn't in your thing when you bought that land?
When we purchased it, we always had the intent to discuss an easement. As a matter of fact, we did.
Of course we knew that. Yes, ma'am. We did know that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Or comments?
Since y'all are sitting there, excuse me. Sitting there talking about building road, Tom Osborne, 802 Southwest Bernard, or 905, or 811. And we're talking building a road there. Well, why don't we build a truck route right up there to 67, so we can stop talking about making trucks turn and just go straight up? How about that idea? Instead of getting rid of that road, build your road right up to 67. Because that's next on the agenda too.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments,
Mayor,
yes.
just from the audience or from council?
Well, from the audience and the council, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I just got a couple, I guess, comments. And one is, not understanding where the Moores are coming from, and if they think it's going to devalue the property. But from my point of view, that will never be a street. I mean, I can't read the future, but with the street radius, 11 to 18%, or 15 to 18%, plus the city requirements for the width of the street, 26 feet. There's barely even that between the two buildings. I don't even know how that would meet requirements with allowing a setback from the building. And the portion of the street that they've discussed about it being traveled by vehicle before, that's all fenced off. That's nothing but basically a cliff line and trees. I can't hardly ever see it ever being, or when the last time it was, I know they said it was years ago, but it obviously hasn't been used for any kind of vehicle pathway since, but it's fenced off, so there's nothing that allows vehicle transportation between Mesquite down the hill line, because it's blocked off. But the biggest thing, I guess, is the survey. The distance of the footages on Mesquite. You really go up there, and there's maybe a four-wheeler trail, and the rest is on a decline. So I don't see how possibly there could ever be a street if the properties are surveyed correctly now. If the Moore's properties are surveyed correctly now, their fence line actually pushes over to what you would think Mesquite Street would be on. So it just pushed the rest of the street over the side of the cliff, the decline. So I just don't see how it would ever possibly be a street that would accommodate and go to the property. I mean, if it was only one access into the property, I'd look at it in a different view. But if their property is a future development, they have ways to make more than just one entry and one exit. That's my point. That's my thoughts. We've got an opportunity right now to help rejuvenate our downtown area, and unfortunately, we don't know when the Moores are talking about doing that, and I don't think that even with the plan that they would come up with would actually utilize Elm Street as a pathway.
I think, in my opinion, we have to look at where it says abutting, because you just said where their property line pushes it into that street. So to me, that means they are abutting. And I think we really have to be very careful when we look at, because I think, from what I understand, if abutting just means touching, if your property line is right there, or your fence post is right there, and the street is right there, and it may just barely touch it, I think that means abutting.
Okay, let's say the next step is to get an accurate survey. Get an accurate survey. At that point, this is maybe for the attorney, at that point, with an accurate survey, it shows that there's absolutely no way a street can be put in per footage ordinance or the street radius depth. What do we do at that point?
I think Councilman Brown, I think all of your points you're making now go more to the issue of, do the Moores have any type of claim against the city that an inverse condemnation or a taking claim against the city for depriving them of the value of the property. So I think the points you're making are clearly straight on the point of that issue, about any type of taking claim against the city, whether or not, as far as are they abutting or joining a property owner, what are options to deal with that? That's the first question. Really the remedy for that would be if we're wrong and they are abutting or joining, then they just declare that our vacation is void and it would go back to being a street. Now, of course, their lawsuit, if they were to bring one, would have both those claims to set aside the vacation plus to claim a taking if there was a vacation as well. But obviously, if you void the vacation, then there's no more taking issue because you're just going through what it was prior to y'all making this vote. So the way I look at it, you really got two and a half decisions to make tonight. Either prove as presented, deny as presented, or you can, of course, send back to city staff with further instructions on how to seek other options. And I'll tell you right now, I think those only options would consist of really two things. Number one, do we have a resurvey of the property to see where the property lines are at and possibly adjusting what we're requesting to vacate? That could be an option. And like I said, still from a legal standpoint, I think it's still a gray area. I don't know where we end up on that issue at the end. But I think it takes the abutting and joining out of the question for now. Option two, are there other ways we can satisfy the Lemire's request and allow this development to go on if that's what you guys wish to do, that does not require us vacating the street? And there's probably some options we have for sure. We can get pretty creative, I think, but I don't know if ultimately it fits within the Lemire's designs what they want to do with that property. So that's really y'all's options that you have tonight to decide and vote on, and that's about it.
I'll just make one comment.
One more.
Yeah, well, we were asked by the city to get a survey, and so we personally paid for a survey of the city's property, and it was submitted in the packet that we had to fill out. So there is a brand new survey done by a preliminary surveyor.
You have that?
It's this right here.
That's it?
Yep, that's it.
And I don't believe you can have a budding property when there's another easement in between there, right? So they're not touching any of the easement that we're,
I don't, you need to clarify that.
well, they're not. Their property doesn't touch any of the easement that we're trying to have vacated. It doesn't.
It touches another easement.
I mean, there's a point that they circled that maybe touches an easement, but that half of the easement is not, that's not our easement. It doesn't affect the easement that we're trying to have vacated.
Does it touch part of the street?
It doesn't touch part of the street that we're trying to vacate. No, that's our property on both sides.
I got you.
We're talking about Moore's property, right?
Yeah.
Is your property touching Moore's property?
In the back, no, there's another easement there. Or I don't know, we never found out if that easement's been vacated or not vacated or whatever, but no, it doesn't.
Would you step back up here and question?
Sure, sorry.
So when you say another easement, you're talking about this right here would be Mesquite Street, is what you're talking about? What are you talking about, an easement? Another easement?
Well, up on the top. I don't have the whole map, so. But that's the part that we're trying to get.
This is yours and this you're trying to get this.
Correct. Because we can't do, I mean, this goes straight up a hill, so we can't build anything over here anyway, so.
But the Moore's defense is because it pinpoints to the center. Is the one
And
that's
again, the city can put together an indemnification contract with us, and we'll indemnify the city against any lawsuit that they bring. I'm pretty confident about it, so.
I don't understand why you'd have an easement between two pieces of property. You usually go down the street, not between properties.
This survey does not show an easement.
Stephanie, do you have another slide that shows the Moore's property, Mesquite Street?
I think what the mayor's talking about is that the Mesquite Street, there's really 4 tracts of land, guys, that you have. You have the 2 front tracts are owned by the Lemire's, and then the 2 back tracts are owned by the Moores. And then you have Mesquite Street at the top, and of course more of the Moore property on the other side of Mesquite Street.
Mesquite Street is behind, Mesquite Street goes down the middle of the Moore's property, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Mesquite Street's not the issue though. It's between the Lemurs and the Moores down on the bottom of the hill down there. Where the Moore's property stops, you're 100 foot. That's where the abutment is a problem.
I don't think it's a problem for a street that's never going to be built.
May I ask you, I know this has been an ongoing topic. When were you planning to start any kind of development? If this was approved, and it was.
So we were going to be open this past spring break.
Yeah.
As of a year ago, when we started this process. We plan on starting demo tomorrow, if this goes our way. The gray house needs to come down, it's bad. The whole block looks bad, so we want to start immediately.
I think it's just gonna bring value to it.
I've got another question for, I think, our City Works.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
So what you say are requirements, city requirements for 26 foot on a new street? 30 feet. So what happens if it doesn't meet a 30-foot requirement? Is that a law, or is that something the city can?
No, well, that's an ordinance. Any new street that's built in the new development has a 50-foot right-of-way with a 30-foot street minimum, back curb to back curb.
Okay, so that would bring a question from what the Moore's attorney said versus what Mrs. Muir said, and that's what are we defining as a narrow strip or a street? Because if there's no footage is there for a street, it can never be a street. Even if it was planned development, somebody came and paid for it, it can never be a street.
It's on Council Brown, we have it plotted on the city's plot to be a street, those are probably the
Yeah.
footage, no, I mean, it's already been designated as a street 100 years ago.
But even if it can't meet a 30-foot requirement?
Yeah, I mean, that issue is just, the sole focus of your inquiry should be whether or not we can vacate property with a street without this belief whether or not the Moores are abutting or joining or not, and we need their consent. And that's the sole issue. Or if you don't care and say, we want this developed to move forward, is that important to St-Glen Rose, then let's deal with it later on in a lawsuit, that's what happens. Or you say, we don't want to invite litigation, so we'll shut it down and keep it as is and just let it stay whatever's there now. So that's really what your inquiry has to be.
Come on up, but we
Sorry.
really, this is it?
Sure.
Because the rest needs to be with the
I
council.
just think that it's, definitions are so important. And I just want to seek clarification, and perhaps Mr. Pendleton, you can do this. The notes that I brought with me uses the words only adjoining. And I know the term abut has come up several times, and it starts to become vernacular. I know I copied it very precisely, but it's entirely possible that I made a mistake. And so I just want to make sure, because those kind of things make a difference in how comfortable people feel, the difference between abutment and adjoining. So that would be something that maybe Mr. Pendleton can help out with. Thank you.
Okay. So this is our thing. We can sit here and continue to debate. We can vote on the way it is written to approve it or to decline it. We can still, if you feel like there's still more questions and we need to table it for one more month, we can do that. I think we have a lot of information, and I think it's things we really need to think about. I do agree with Mr. Moore when he said we are setting precedents. I do worry about the abutment, and that's, this is Texas Transportation Code. I'm assuming, is that the same as when that's the code? Is that?
So the Texas Transportation Code is 311.008 is the authority to do what you guys are trying to do.
Okay, so
And
it's
so
the authority.
That's the authority. That's the legal authority to go through and vacate a part of the street. Like I said, the answer to Lemur's question a second ago, that's what she's asking as far as defining, and it talks about property abutting the street or alleyway. That's the definition of it's not really the definition, that's what we're talking about, the property abutting the street or the alleyway. So really, at the end of the day, the Moore's argument has to be that we're abutting because we share a common point, boundary point on the very front that abuts the property, not the backside. The whole backside I don't think matters. Their only claim could be that we abut because we share the same common endpoint with the street. And like I said, my issue with that is where does it stop at? If the law allows you to partially vacate a street, then if that was true, then that means you just keep going progressively down the line, and the next property owner, the next property owner, the next property owner can all continue to say we protest, because we all continue to share the same common points. And like I said, but there's nothing I know of anywhere in the law that talks about you can't vacate a portion of your property in order to maybe circumvent that. And I mean, that's, I guess, a legal issue for the court to decide. I guess you can claim that's improper advice, I don't know, but that's looking for a reason to want to do it. That could be an issue, and let the court decide if that's defies the spirit of the law or not. So.
Well, Mayor, I just think that evidence that's been presented before us and before, adding what Pendleton said, I think that we have enough structure that says because of the street slope, because of the street width, because of the abutting, I'm leaning towards, I believe they're talking about being adjacent to, not a pinpoint that ties it together by a dot. I don't see that it's I don't see that we're going to jeopardize the city financially or in litigation if we move forward to abandon the street. I think that we're slowing progress down for our downtown businesses, that we all campaign on helping them. You know, we want to see them thrive. And we're talking about a street that may be built, and in my mind, I don't think it ever will. My mind is to approve the request.
Okay, so do I have any other comments, John?
Yeah, don't forget, Mayor, you gotta sign this thing and this ordinance if we pass this, where it says we are in compliance with that code on all that. And I think all the council needs to think about that. Probably just got it back here in the ordinance at the back of where we've been looking. Where it reads, if all the owners of real property abutting the street or alley is submitted to the governing body. And that has not happened.
That's correct.
As far as we know, it's abutting. We don't know it's not. We don't know it is.
Right, and although, our attorney said it's not just talking about a point, I think if it's touching anything, it makes it abutting.
Yeah.
And so that bothers me, and we can't decide if that can be made into a street or not. That's not what we're really looking at. We're looking at, are we following the law? Has everything been presented? And, yeah. And
I think we need to do the right thing for both. Try to help both parties here.
I don't know if we can.
I don't think we can
I
either
think the
unless
first
we
thing we gotta
just,
do is follow the law
yeah, follow the law.
instead of a lawsuit.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, you know, if it's the parking, because there's still an easement there for them to park, that Mr. Scott Stevenson, right, Dr.
Stevenson.
So, I mean, the parking part, they can still go ahead and park there because that's still an easement. So, I agree with Councilman Martin on, we have to make sure we are following the law, and on our ordinance, on the second whereas, it says pursuant to, I don't know what the SS means. I'm only familiar with Texas education, so I can't tell you that, but 311.008 of the Texas Transportation Code, the governing body of general law municipality by ordinance may vacate, abandon, or close a street or alley of the municipality if a petition signed by all the owners of real property abutting the street or alley is submitted. We do not have that. We do not have that at this point, yes.
So we would need to define what abutting is. Is that the only word that's stopping?
Well, the fact that it says, and they all have to have that petition. Because I know on some of these streets that we have closed in the past, both owners signed it. You know, it was between two owners. Both owners signed that, so technically they each got half of that street.
Right, in this case, both halves would be owned by the Mears.
But this one is still touching, it's still abutting it. So I think that makes it,
Abutting the street, the entire street?
it doesn't have to abut the entire street. It just has to touch it. So I think legally, when you look at what our ordinance is saying, we have to really, look at that carefully. And this does say, streets or alleys owned in fee or used by easement are not subject to the notice of bidding requirements of bidding requirements.
Like, so we don't have to bid the street because they own both sides. I mean, it's, what was, I believe Samira brought that up, and I said earlier, we don't have to get a fair market value and that kind of stuff, it just vacates back to the property owners. So it's not a bidding.
Yeah. So, I've got a question at this point. Is there any alternative solution to this, another pathway we can look to see about getting this done, or are we presented everything that we possibly can?
Like I said, I mean, I think if you want to make a motion or if you want to direct staff to look at other alternatives, but like I explained, I think the only two options that I can think of and have thought at this point would be to redefine the area you're going to vacate and or work out a different agreement with Lemires that doesn't involve a vacation of the street.
Question,
Well, I don't
Mayor.
know.
Yes.
So I guess one of my concerns is leaving the street that can never be used as a street. That seems like there's some kind of maybe legal guideline that may come into effect when it's talking about that. I mean, if you've got a street that's designated as a street, but it's never going to be a street because of the radius, the steep of the radius and the width of the street, what do you do with it? You just leave it abandoned, or you just leave it unused, and nobody gets any benefit out of it ever? That's one of my questions. So it seems like there may be some kind of legality that ties in to say, okay, even if it is named a street, it can never be used as one. So therefore, maybe what rights does the city have at that point? And that may be some more.
I was Mr. Brian, I can answer that question with 99% certainty that there is none. I mean, because it's designated on the original township plot as being a city street. Therefore, I mean, it's going to be a street. I don't think we'd come back and say, well, that original plot 100 plus years ago was wrong, it shouldn't have been a street. Kind of like your example of Mesquite Street there, I used to talk about this can never really be a street because it's half it's on the side of a hill.
Yeah.
It's still designated as a street at some point. They put this together, the city together. I think we're kind of stuck with that.
I got one option,
One question, and that's all.
just one option, 99-year lease at whatever the market value is today. And the city can terminate that lease if at any time the city and or state or nation comes up with a funding mechanism to fund that street.
But that's not on the agenda, so.
He said that you're trying to come up with solutions.
I know, and I appreciate that, thank you. And so that would have to be on another agenda. I'm sorry. Okay. I need a motion, or we can postpone. But we've been on it quite a while, so we need to decide what we need to do.
If no one makes a motion, it would just die for lack of motion, period. So,
Well, here's the thing, I want to make a motion to pass, and if not pass, then it's dead in the water, because I truly believe that we have an opportunity here to help a new business owner, our downtown association, versus something that's never going to happen. And that's my opinion, yes, but that's truly the way I feel. Yeah, it does affect other people's property, but it's just going to be a stagnant piece of property that sits there and never gets any use. So at this point, what I would do, I would like to suggest, and whoever makes a motion, me, whatever, is that we do table this and look into other possibilities of what we can do to accommodate both parties by leaving the street open possibly, and maybe putting together a lease contract, or even move forward and finding out if there are possibilities that we can close the street through other legal processes, like the street can never be used again. I think we need to look further in depth of more ways we can solve this one way or the other. So whatever it takes by the city administrator, city attorney, city secretary, staff, let's move forward. and try
Water
to get this
department,
done.
you know.
Yeah.
Didn't Dogger have a special permit?
he had an easement agreement. He had an easement agreement for use of the space. It was, I believe, a 5-year agreement, which has since expired. Part of that was that they had to keep that insurance policy, certificate of insurance, filed with the city. They did that the first year and never did it again. So there was one. It was short term, but all of the rules were not followed.
Couldn't do nothing permanent on it or anything like that.
Correct.
I tend to agree with Councilmember Bryant, because the Lemures, this isn't a hard and fast thing for them. They want to work with the city however they can in order to accomplish their end goals. They're not saying, well, if you don't give me this easement, then we're walking away from the deal.
Right.
So I think if they're willing to work with us, I'm sure the Moores are willing to have some sort of a solution where they're not completely feeling like they're being not heard at all. Then we should explore that option and see what else is available out there that could potentially benefit both parties.
Yes.
Exactly.
So do you want to put that in a motion? Or is that your motion?
I think that would be more of a direct staff, table and direct staff type thing, is that?
I have down, table until future meeting to explore other options, basically, and that's completely up to you guys, but
I
that,
think explore all options, and that's also including potentially closing the street or vacating the street, if it's legal. You know, let's just keep looking at that and not give up on that part of it just yet, but explore other options as well. So all options.
okay, all options for vacating or easements
Or leasing, et cetera.
or leasing. Got it.
Okay, so Chris, did you want to go ahead and make that as a motion? I mean,
If she wants to repeat that back, I can.
Table.
I will make it a
The motion would be to table until future meeting to explore all options for either vacating, easement, or leasing agreements.
okay.
I would like to see these two parties try to work out a solution, because I think we've got somewhat of a tempest in a teapot here. These folks have agreed to work with them if they want to develop it, and this point of contention, whether this point or, I've heard two things, point of contact and adjacent. So we're in a legal gray area here. So I don't think it would be fair for us to move forward as a council, not being, where the law is very clear, because I've heard from our council that the law is a little bit gray here. We're in a gray area. So we have to follow the law. I agree with you on that. But I also think that there's a way that we can accomplish the goals for both of these people. You know, if we could get you guys to agree to some sort of mediation or something to try to work this out while we explore the legalities of this, I think that would be in everyone's best interest.
I do too, yeah.
So we can move
So
forward with
do
the
we-
motion and they
so
can
do we
maybe
have a
get together
second?
and do that.
Yeah. We can only suggest that.
So is that a motion?
Chris made the
Chris
motion.
made the motion, and Wanda will make the second.
Okay.
I do have a question. If we do table it to another meeting, will it be in a month or will it be in 2 weeks?
That's gonna be up to you guys. There's a lot of research to do, and we're right in the middle of budget season, so that's really gonna be up to you guys. But it's gonna be rough. And you guys haven't even made it through the rest of the packet, and there's gonna be some things in there that need to be done as well, so we'll do whatever you guys decide. What?
Until you tell us you're ready for us to meet on it again.
Well, I don't think that's fair either.
Let's postpone it for 1 month since there's a lot of research.
1 month. Okay.
Is that okay with
Postpone
everybody?
for 1 month. Okay.
So can we add that to the?
I did.
Okay,
Did
so
it in
all
both.
in favor, raise your hand.